The airport doors opened with a cold rush of air, and Claire stepped out knowing one thing for sure: coming back was harder than leaving. She had booked the first flight home without thinking twice, heart racing as the plane crossed the country. Now she stood on American soil that felt familiar and foreign at the same time, her suitcase heavy with more than clothes. This trip wasn't about comfort. It was about facing what she had spent years avoiding. The drive from the airport took her past streets she knew by heart. Every turn carried a memory she hadn't invited back. The town looked calm, almost kind, like it had never watched her struggle. When the car stopped in front of the house, Claire hesitated. The white porch, the narrow steps, the old wind chime moving in the breeze, it all felt frozen in time. She took a breath and walked inside. Her mother met her with open arms, holding her tightly as if afraid Claire might disappear again. For a brief moment, everything felt safe. Then Richard stepped forward. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome back," he said. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that settled deep in Claire's chest. She smiled back, polite and quiet, already feeling the pressure of being seen and judged. Dinner came too fast. The table felt smaller than she remembered. Richard asked questions that sounded normal, but felt sharp. How long would she stay? Was her job really stable? Had moving away been worth it? Claire answered calmly, choosing her words with care. Each response felt like a test she could never fully pass. Her mother tried to soften the conversation, but the tension stayed, filling the space between every sentence. After dinner, Claire escaped to her old bedroom. The walls were the same pale blue, the windows still facing the backyard where she once dreamed of leaving. She sat on the bed, listening to the house settle into silence. The confidence she had built in another city felt thin here. Being back didn't break her, but it reminded her how easily old doubts could return. Sleep came late. Her thoughts ran fast, jumping between the past and the present. She told herself this was temporary. She would help her mother stay a few weeks, then leave again. Still, a quiet fear lingered. What if coming back meant losing the version of herself she worked so hard to become? Morning arrived with gray light and the sound of footsteps downstairs. Claire left the house early, needing air and distance. The town smelled like coffee and wet pavement. Main Street hadn't changed much. Familiar stores stood in the same places as if waiting for her return. She walked without a plan until she reached the cafe near the corner. As she reached for the door, someone held it open. "Claire?" A voice said, surprised and warm. She looked up and saw Ethan. For a moment, the world paused. He looked older, more grounded, but his smile was the same. The years between them seemed to fade in an instant. "Ethan," she said, unsure whether to laugh or cry. They ordered coffee and sat by the window. The conversation flowed easily, skipping over the awkwardness of time apart. They talked about work, the town, small things that didn't hurt to say out loud. Ethan told her he never left, that life had pulled him in unexpected directions, too. Claire found herself smiling without effort, feeling lighter than she had since landing. Ethan studied her carefully. "You look tired," he said, not unkindly. "I am," Claire admitted. "But it's good to be back." "I think," he nodded, as if he understood more than she said. The cafe felt warm and safe, a small space where she didn't have to explain herself. For the first time since returning, Claire felt seen in a way that didn't demand anything from her. When they stood to leave, Ethan asked if they could talk again. Claire said yes, without hesitation. Outside, the cold air felt less harsh. She walked back toward the house with cautious hope, something she hadn't expected to feel so soon. Her phone buzzed before she reached the porch. A message from Richard flashed on the screen. "We need to talk tonight." No explanation. No warmth. The weight returned instantly. Claire slipped the phone into her pocket and stared at the front door. She knew that conversation wouldn't be easy. Still, she straightened her shoulders and stepped inside, knowing this was only the beginning of what coming home would demand from her. The dinner table was quiet, almost unbearably so, when Claire walked in. The house felt smaller at night, shadows stretching across the walls as if they were listening. Her mother tried to smile, to fill the silence with small talk, But Claire noticed the tension in the air. Richard didn't say much at first, just watched her eyes calculating, as if measuring how much she had changed or how much she hadn't. When he finally spoke, his words cut sharper than he probably realized. "You can't keep running from your life," he said. "Coming back doesn't erase your failures." Claire didn't flinch. She held his gaze calmly, not because she wasn't hurt, but because she had learned long ago that arguing rarely solved anything. She nodded, letting the weight of her silence speak louder than any words she could muster. Richard looked frustrated, but she didn't meet his challenge. She simply took a slow breath and continued eating, pretending the tension was something ordinary, like background noise. After dinner, Claire excused herself, pretending she needed fresh air. She stepped onto the back porch, the cold biting at her cheeks, and leaned on the railing. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe through the knot of anxiety and memories coiled inside her. The night was still, the streetlights glowing like distant stars. Then came the sound of footsteps approaching. "I thought you might need company," said a familiar voice. Claire opened her eyes to see Ethan standing there, hands tucked in the pockets of his jacket. She felt a sudden warmth, a relief she hadn't expected. He didn't ask why she was upset or press for details. He simply stood beside her, offering quiet companionship. For a long time, they didn't speak. The cold night wrapped around them as if protecting them from the world inside the house. Finally, Claire whispered, "I used to think leaving would fix me. That moving away would make all the bad things disappear. But some things follow you home." Ethan glanced at her, his eyes soft. "And some things," he said, "wait for you." She laughed softly, a sound that felt foreign after so many tense hours. It wasn't joy exactly, more like release. For the first time since returning, she felt the grip of fear loosen. She didn't tell him everything, and she didn't need to. Just having him there made her feel understood. Like her presence wasn't a problem, like she didn't have to defend herself. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of small escapes. Claire spent more time outside the house than inside, walking along familiar streets, grabbing coffee at the cafe with Ethan, talking about everything and nothing. Each conversation chipped away at the tension inside her, reminding her that there was life beyond the walls of that house. With Ethan, she wasn't defined by her past or her mistakes. She was just herself, breathing again. Her mother noticed the change. One evening, she joined Claire on the back porch, sitting quietly beside her. The night was calm, crickets chirping softly in the distance. "You don't have to stay where you're hurt," her mother said gently. "Home should never feel like a punishment. If it does, maybe you're meant to go somewhere else." Claire nodded, the words settling in her chest like a gentle truth she had tried to ignore. She had returned out of love and obligation, but love and obligation shouldn't feel like chains. Not if she wanted to be happy. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Claire began packing a bag. It was lighter than she expected, almost symbolic of the emotional weight she was finally releasing. She knew she couldn't stay, not yet, maybe not ever. But she also realized leaving didn't mean abandoning anything. She was simply choosing herself. And for the first time in years, that felt powerful rather than selfish. The next morning, she stopped by the cafe where Ethan was already waiting. He looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that carried warmth and unspoken understanding. "Going back?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Claire said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But not the same way I left before." He reached across the table and lightly touched her hand. "Then maybe this isn't goodbye," he said. Claire felt a flutter in her chest, a mix of hope and fear, but mostly relief. For years, she had imagined leaving and returning, imagining all the worst possible scenarios. But reality was simpler. It was not about battles or grudges. It was about moments like this, moments that reminded her she could still feel connected, still be seen, still care. As she drove away from the house, the town stretched behind her, quiet and unassuming. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The memories and pain would always be part of her, but so would the promise of new beginnings. Ethan's hand on the cafe table, the gentle encouragement from her mother. The realization that she didn't need anyone's approval to live her life, they all filled her with a quiet strength. Claire realized then that coming home wasn't about staying or even forgiving. It was about understanding who she was, what she wanted, and where she truly belonged. She had faced the house, the tension, the judgments, and walked away not broken, but stronger. The road ahead was uncertain, as it always would be. But for the first time in years, she felt like she had choices again. The past could exist without controlling her. The future could be something she shaped on her own. And maybe, just maybe, love could find its way back in unexpected ways. Quiet and patient, waiting exactly where it needed to be. Claire's heart wasn't heavy anymore. It was full not with fear or regret, but with possibility, hope, and the gentle knowledge that she could return home without losing herself. That leaving didn't always mean abandoning, and that sometimes the most important journeys were the ones that brought you back to yourself.